I am 91 years old, and I have watched young people make the same mistake my entire life. Not similar mistakes, not variations of it, the exact same one. Generation after generation, decade after decade. Bright, capable, full of potential young people, walking straight into the same wall and acting surprised every single time they hit it. And nobody is telling them it is there. So I'm going to tell you, right now, plain as I can say it. The biggest mistake young people make is spending their 20s and 30s becoming someone impressive, instead of becoming someone real. And by the time most people figure out the difference, they are standing in the middle of a life that looks exactly right from the outside and feels completely hollow from the inside. I know because I did it. I know because I watched nearly everyone I grew up with do it. And I know because the regret that comes from it is a very specific kind of quiet that sits with you for the rest of your days and does not ever fully leave. So stay with me, because what I am about to tell you is the thing I wish someone had sat me down and said when I was 25, and certain I already knew everything worth knowing. In 1957, I was 22 years old, and I had a plan. I had written it down, which at 22 felt very serious and very adult. And the plan was clear. Career first, financial stability second, everything else after. The everything else included friendships I kept meaning to tend properly. A woman named Helen, who I was half in love with, and kept telling myself I would pursue once things settled down. A passion for woodworking that I had discovered at 16 and quietly set aside because it did not fit the plan. And a version of myself that was honest and present and not constantly performing competence for an audience that mostly did not care. I put all of that in the everything else category. And everything else became the category I never got around to. I want to tell you about a man named Vincent. I met Vincent at my first job, a manufacturing firm in the Midwest, the year I turned 23. Vincent was 31 and already 3 rungs above me on the ladder and moving fast. He was exactly the kind of man I wanted to become. Polished, confident, respected. He dressed well and spoke well and commanded every room he entered. And I studied him the way young men study the version of themselves they are trying to build. Vincent had what our generation called the full package. The career trajectory, the nice apartment, the right associations, the right clubs, the right image. He was magnificent at being impressive. I ran into Vincent at a reunion 20 years later. He was 51. The career had continued its upward line. He had more than I did by every external measure. But there was something in his eyes that I had not seen in the young Vincent, a kind of exhaustion that went deeper than tiredness, the specific fatigue of a man who has been performing for so long he can no longer locate the person underneath the performance. He told me his marriage had ended 2 years earlier. He said his children, 2 boys he clearly loved, felt like strangers to him in the way that is worse than strangers, because strangers you simply do not know, and these were people he had been in the same house with for 15 years. He said something at that reunion that I wrote down in a notebook when I got home, because I knew it was going to matter. He said, "I spent 30 years building a reputation and forgot to build a self." And there was nothing dramatic about the way he said it. That was the worst part. He said it the way you say the weather, like a fact you have already finished being surprised by. Vincent's business card was still in his breast pocket when he said it. The title on it was impressive. He looked at it when he handed it to me, and I could see him calculating the distance between the title and the man. It was a long distance. Now here is what most people think this mistake is about. They think it is about work-life balance. They think it is about slowing down or prioritizing better, or managing your time differently. But that is not the mistake I am talking about. The mistake goes deeper than your schedule. The mistake is an identity mistake. It is choosing, usually without fully realizing you are choosing, to build a curated version of yourself rather than an actual one. To spend your most formative years optimizing for how you appear rather than who you are. To practice being impressive rather than practicing being honest. To network instead of befriend. To achieve instead of experience. To perform confidence instead of building the kind of quiet inner foundation that means you can be in a room alone with yourself without needing to check your phone every 4 minutes. And I understand why young people make this choice. I want to be fair about that. I made it myself, and I was not stupid, and I was not shallow. I was just young and scared, and living in a world that was measuring me constantly, and I wanted to measure up. The world does not tell you that you are building the wrong thing. The world rewards the performance. It applauds the impressive version. It promotes it and validates it and holds it up as an example. So you keep building it because that is what gets reinforced, not realizing that every year you spend constructing the performance is a year you are not spending figuring out who you actually are underneath it. I have seen this play out across 7 decades of watching human beings grow up and grow old. I saw it in the 50s when the measure was conformity, and men built lives that looked exactly like their neighbors, and died with no particular idea of who they were apart from the neighborhood. I saw it in the 70s when the measure shifted to rebellion, and people built anti-establishment identities with just as much performance and just as little genuine self-examination. I watched the 80s turn striving into a personality type, and the 90s make busyness a status symbol. And now I am watching your generation build personal brands, which is just a modern name for a very old mistake. It is impressiveness with a better distribution system. The emptiness at the center of it is completely unchanged. Nothing has changed. Only the platform is different. The performance is identical. Here is what I know now at 91 that I did not know at 25. The people who end up genuinely happy, not visibly successful, not impressively accomplished, but actually and quietly happy in a way that does not require an audience, all have one thing in common. They know who they are when nobody is watching. They built a relationship with themselves somewhere along the way that was honest and specific, and not contingent on anyone else's approval. They did the uncomfortable work of figuring out what they actually value, what they actually feel, what they actually want, apart from what they were told to want. And they built a life around that, rather than around an image of what a successful life is supposed to look like. At work is unglamorous. It does not photograph well. It does not make a good story at a dinner party. It requires you to sit with uncertainty and discomfort, and the particular embarrassment of being a work in progress in a world that rewards people who pretend they are already finished. It requires real friendships, the kind where someone can tell you the truth about yourself, and you can hear it without collapsing. And real friendships require time and vulnerability, and showing up in ways that are inconvenient and not strategic. It requires knowing what you love, and doing it even when it is not productive and does not fit the plan. It requires making mistakes at full speed, instead of cautiously avoiding anything that might reveal an imperfection. I never got around to Helen. I want to say that clearly because it matters. She married someone else in 1961, a man who apparently had the sense to not wait until things settled down. I saw her once in the mid-70s, briefly, at a mutual friend's gathering. She looked happy in a way that was completely unperformed, genuinely, privately, specifically happy. She did not need the room to notice it. It was just there, in the way she stood and the way she laughed, and the way she looked at her husband when she thought nobody was watching. I drove home that evening thinking about all the everything else I had filed away for later, and I felt the weight of it in a way I had not let myself feel before. That drive home changed something in me. I am glad it did. I wish it had happened 15 years earlier. So I am asking you to do something that is going to feel strange and possibly uncomfortable given everything the world around you is telling you to do right now. I am asking you to spend some of your ambition on yourself, not on your image, not on your brand, not on what you are building for other people to evaluate and approve, on yourself. The actual interior self that nobody else can access, and that you have to live with every single minute of every single day for the rest of your life. Ask yourself questions that do not have impressive answers. What do I actually enjoy? What kind of person do I want to be in private? Who loves me for something other than what I produce? What would I choose to do with a Tuesday if nothing was being measured? Those questions are not soft. I know they sound soft. They are the hardest questions you will ever answer honestly. Most people never answer them at all. They stay busy enough that the questions cannot catch up with them. And then one day the busyness ends, through retirement or illness or loss, or just the natural slowing of age, and the questions are waiting right there where they were left, patient and unanswered, and the silence they create is enormous. Do not leave them unanswered, not because the answers are easy, but because living with the questions is how you build the self that can hold everything else. The career, the relationships, the losses, the failures, the ordinary Tuesdays, all of it. You need something underneath all of it that is genuinely yours, not constructed for an audience, not contingent on approval, not collapsible the moment the performance stops being applauded. Vincent retired at 68. He learned to paint. He told me this in a letter, a real handwritten letter, which surprised me because it was not the kind of thing the 31-year-old Vincent would have done. He said he was terrible at painting and completely unable to stop doing it. He said it was the first thing in 40 years that he did purely because he wanted to, and for no other reason. He said he thought about what I might think of the paintings, and then realized he genuinely did not care, and that the not caring felt like the first real freedom he had experienced as an adult. He sent me a photograph of one of them, a bowl of fruit on a kitchen table, unsteady lines, imperfect perspective, completely alive in a way his business cards never were. I still have that photograph. I look at it sometimes when I need to remember what it looks like, when someone finally stops building the performance and starts building the person. You are not too young to start, and you are not too busy, and the right time is not after the next milestone, or the next raise, or the next year when things will be clearer. The right time is the moment you decide that who you actually are matters more than who you appear to be. That moment can be right now. That moment can be today. I am 91 years old. I know who I am when nobody is watching. It took me longer than it should have, but I got there. You can get there faster. That is the whole point. Start now.